They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from those who share your blood. My name is Autumn. I'm 32, and the night I'm about to describe shattered everything I thought I knew about family, love, and loyalty. Picture this. I stepped into the glittering lobby of Manhattan's most exclusive hotel, my heart already racing with unease. The moment I entered that ballroom, the champagne-soaked laughter died like someone had pulled a plug. There, commanding center stage beneath cascading chandeliers, stood my mother, her manicured fingers wrapped around the hand of my ex-fiancé, Jason. Her voice rang out across hundreds of upturned faces. My youngest daughter has finally found the man she truly deserves, Jason. The same man who'd knelt before me with trembling hands just 12 months earlier, promising me forever. Now he was bowing his head, lips brushing across Lauren's knuckles, my sister's knuckles, while staring directly at me with eyes that held no remorse whatsoever. But here's the twist that made my blood run cold. Among those hundreds of witnesses was the CEO of the very corporation I'd been secretly negotiating to acquire. Everything I'd worked for, standing on a knife's edge. So tell me, what would you do if your entire family orchestrated your public humiliation? Drop a comment below, smash that like button, and hit subscribe, because what happened next didn't just stun them. It changed everything. The truth hit me through a photograph. Emily, my closest friend, sent it without warning, just an image glowing on my phone screen at midnight. Lauren's left hand thrust toward the camera, that unmistakable diamond catching the light with vicious brilliance. My ring! The one Jason and I had selected together on a golden autumn afternoon in Boston, sunlight streaming through the jeweler's window while he squeezed my hand and whispered, "This is just the beginning of our forever." I could still remember how those facets sparkled, how Jason's eyes held mine with such devastating intensity. Now, in that photograph, that same gaze was locked entirely on Lauren. Emily's message consisted of 4 brutal words. Did you know about this? My chest constricted as if steel bands were tightening around my ribcage. No wedding invitation, no warning call. Not even the courtesy of a text message from my mother or anyone bearing our family name. Just silence, followed by this photographic grenade. I sat frozen in my Seattle apartment, my mind a hurricane of rage and disbelief. This wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. They'd written me out of the story as if I'd never existed. Then clarity pierced through the chaos like a lightning strike. I had to go. Not to make a scene or beg for explanations, but to look each of them directly in the eye and remind them that I was still breathing, still standing, still very much part of this narrative and impossible to simply delete. I tracked down the hotel from Lauren's boastful social media post, the Plaza Manhattan, one of the city's crown jewels. I hailed a cab, spent the entire ride in suffocating silence, knuckles white around my purse, staring through rain-streaked windows at a city that suddenly felt hostile. When we pulled up to the entrance, golden light blazed from within like a beacon of cruelty. Limousines disgorged guests draped in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, their laughter sharp as breaking glass. I rushed forward, but 2 security guards materialized like sentinels, blocking my path. "I apologize, ma'am. Are you on the guest list?" The first guard's politeness couldn't mask the immovable barrier he represented. Autumn Bennett. I fought to keep my voice level, professional. "Lauren Bennett is my sister. She's the bride-to-be." His finger scrolled across his tablet with agonizing slowness before his eyes returned to mine. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name doesn't appear on tonight's approved list. The ground seemed to dissolve beneath my feet." They hadn't just emotionally abandoned me. They'd physically barricaded me out, treating me like a threat, a stranger, an unwanted ghost. "I'm her older sister," I insisted, my voice beginning to fracture despite my best efforts. "We're simply following the organizer's instructions," he replied, his expression professionally blank. I drew a shuddering breath, battling the hot pressure building behind my eyes. I refused to break down here, not in front of these strangers. Autumn, is that really you? I whirled around to find Mr. Charles, a former client from my Boston interior design days, approaching with genuine warmth, lighting his weathered face. His handshake was firm, grounding. It's been ages. Why are you standing out here in the cold? Before I could formulate an answer, he turned to the guards with unmistakable authority. She's with me, my personal guest. The guards exchanged uncertain glances before reluctantly stepping aside. I followed Mr. Charles through the towering doors, gratitude and bitterness churning together in my stomach like poison. I shouldn't have needed rescuing, yet without him, I'd have remained locked outside my own sister's celebration like an intruder. The ballroom exploded around me. Dazzling light, intoxicating music, the overwhelming scent of money and privilege. Round tables draped in pristine ivory linens, crystal vases erupting with white roses, champagne glasses catching light like captured stars. The air thick with expensive perfume and hollow laughter, all of it concealing the rot underneath. Then my mother's voice sliced through the din, amplified and merciless. Please join me in celebrating my youngest daughter, Lauren, who has finally found the man she truly deserves, Jason Miller. Time stopped. There, commanding the ballroom's heart, my mother stood resplendent in midnight blue, her fingers intertwined possessively with Jason's. Lauren clung to his other arm, her face radiant with vicious triumph. Jason bent low, pressing his lips to Lauren's hand in a gesture that once belonged to me, while my mother's eyes found mine across the distance with a smile that held no warmth whatsoever. Her next words fell like stones. Autumn, darling, you'll understand eventually. Lauren needs this happiness far more than you ever did. I couldn't respond. Couldn't breathe. The room tilted sickeningly, applause crashing over me like waves trying to drown me. Faces turned my direction, some curious, others pitying, most simply hungry for the spectacle of my destruction. I forced steel into my spine, lifted my chin, and walked deeper into that glittering trap. Inside, a tempest raged. But I knew with absolute certainty I wouldn't leave this place without making them remember exactly who I was. Standing beneath those merciless lights, each clap echoing like the closing of a coffin, my mother's perfume triggered a cascade of memories back when I still believed love and loyalty existed. Without calculation or betrayal, Jason and I collided at a renewable energy conference in San Francisco. I was running a struggling startup with exactly 3 employees and a basement office that flooded when it rained. We specialized in energy storage for remote communities, work that most investors dismissed as too niche, too risky, too idealistic. Jason was freelancing as a financial consultant, hunting for opportunities. He remained through my entire presentation, and when the crowd dispersed, he approached with an outstretched hand and words that changed everything. You just made me believe in something I didn't. No was possible. The months that followed felt like magic. Jason refined my business plans, opened doors to his investment contacts. I showed him that behind spreadsheets lived real families who deserved dignity and power. We shared midnight strategy sessions over cold coffee and mountains of paperwork, building something that felt bigger than both of us. My mother saw it differently. She regularly reminded me I was too much of a dreamer, squandering my youth on fantasies. In her eyes, Lauren embodied perfection, stable, practical, always choosing the safer path. Lauren worked at a prestigious Manhattan law firm, dressed impeccably, entertained wealthy clients. My mother's pride in her was palpable, undeniable. Meanwhile, I became the daughter who needed constant correction, the project that refused to succeed. When my company finally gained traction, Jason proposed a dramatic expansion. His eyes burned with intensity. Transfer me 40% equity. I'll secure capital under my name and handle all financial operations. We'll be true partners, Autumn, equals. But I'd poured every cent, every sleepless night, every drop of my soul into building that company from nothing. 40% wasn't just numbers. It was control, autonomy, my future. Jason, I appreciate your support, but I need to maintain decision-making authority. I told him, keeping my tone gentle but unwavering, if we need funding later, we'll find another path together. That conversation marked the beginning of the end. His messages became sporadic. His voice over the phone turned distant, hollow. Our meetings grew awkward, thick with unspoken tension. I convinced myself it was temporary stress, that we'd weather this storm. One weekend, I visited my mother's house. Lauren was supposedly traveling for work in Chicago. That afternoon, searching for garden shears in the shed, I passed the kitchen door and froze. My mother's voice drifted through, low but crystalline. Jason, you must think strategically. Autumn will never change. She lives trapped inside her own fantasies. Lauren is different. She understands what building a real future requires. My grip tightened around the shears until my knuckles screamed. Jason's hesitant response crackled through the speaker, but I'm still with Autumn. My mother cut him off with surgical precision. Jason, you and Lauren are the genuine match. She admires everything about you. Together you'll build something sustainable, something real. Don't let this opportunity vanish. It won't come twice. I stumbled backward, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I couldn't bear to hear more, yet couldn't force my legs to move. Every syllable felt like a blade sliding between my ribs. The worst part, Jason's silence, no objection, no defense. Just a long, damning pause followed by a resigned sigh that shattered whatever hope remained. That evening's dinner was torture. My mother chattered brightly about Lauren's latest achievements while I pushed food around my plate, nodding mechanically. I couldn't confront what I'd heard not yet. Maybe I wasn't ready to face the truth that the two people I loved most were actively plotting my replacement. The image haunted me, my mother, wine glass in one hand, phone in the other, discussing me like a failed investment she was ready to write off. Now, standing in that engagement party's poisonous glamour, all those scattered pieces assembled into one devastating picture. It had all begun in that moment, my mother's cold manipulation, Jason's willing surrender, and my slow erasure from their story. The proof arrived through an email mishap. A random Tuesday morning, I sat in my cramped office wrestling with an investor presentation when notifications began flooding my inbox, mostly spam, newsletters, seminar invitations. Then one subject line made my blood turn to ice. Friday night, can't wait to see you. Jason's personal email address. But what stopped my heart was the recipient list. My company email appeared alongside Lauren's address. He'd made a simple typo in the domain, and the universe had delivered his betrayal directly to me. My cursor hovered over that message while logic screamed not to open it, to preserve plausible deniability. But my heart, already fractured and bleeding, demanded truth, no matter how brutal. The message was devastatingly brief. Jason writing to Lauren about anticipating their dinner together, missing the way she looked at him, wanting to discuss their plans. Attached was a photograph, wine glass beside a woman's hand, my diamond ring glittering on her finger with obscene clarity. I sat paralyzed while the world collapsed into suffocating silence. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was betrayal, naked and merciless, documented in pixels and words. That night I drove to Lauren's apartment. When she opened the door, surprise flickered across her features before she reclaimed her composure. I thrust my phone forward, email displayed like evidence at a trial. Explain this. My voice emerged low, trembling with barely restrained fury. Lauren glanced at the screen, then met my eyes with unsettling steadiness. You'll thank me someday, she said, as if delivering comfort rather than poison. Why? The single word carried the weight of everything breaking inside me. Because Jason belongs with me. You're too much of a dreamer, Autumn. You'd only drag him down. I'm different. I know how to build a real future with him. Her voice remained cold, calculated, each word deliberate and sharp. I couldn't process what hurt more, hearing my sister confess to stealing my fiancé, or hearing her genuinely believe she was doing me a favor. I fled that apartment and drove straight to my mother's house. She sat in her living room, teacup balanced delicately, looking mildly surprised at my unannounced arrival. I just confronted Lauren. I began, fighting to keep my voice steady. She admitted everything about her and Jason. My mother didn't flinch. She placed her cup down with a soft clink, sighing as if discussing a minor inconvenience. Autumn, sometimes you must learn to sacrifice for family. Lauren and Jason make sense together. You'll understand eventually, and you'll find someone else. I stared directly into her eyes, searching desperately for regret, guilt, even discomfort, but all I found was unshakable certainty, cold conviction. You're telling me to surrender the man I love to my own sister. Not surrender, she corrected softly. Choose what serves everyone best. You're still young, darling. You have your dreams to chase. Don't cling to a relationship that won't bring lasting benefits. Her words detonated in my chest. Everything inside me shattered into irreparable pieces. I finally understood. This wasn't just Jason and Lauren's betrayal. My own mother, who should have protected me above all else, had actively chosen their side, orchestrated my replacement. I turned away, climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom, and opened the door. The familiar space suddenly felt hostile, foreign. I quietly pulled my largest suitcase from the closet and began packing. Each folded item felt like burying a memory, tucking it away where it couldn't hurt me anymore. I took only essentials, clothes, company documents, my laptop. The only thing I could truly trust. No sentimental items, no family photographs, nothing that could chain me to this place. When I dragged the suitcase downstairs, my mother remained in her chair, eyes fixed on the television. She asked one question without turning her head. Where are you going? Somewhere I can finally live my own life, I replied. Nobody followed, nobody tried to stop me. The door closed behind me, leaving that brightly lit house feeling colder than any winter storm. I stepped into the darkness, destination unknown, knowing only that I would never again accept the role they'd written for me. I drove for 3 relentless days east coast to west coast, stopping only for gas and fitful sleep in anonymous roadside motels. Seattle welcomed me with soft morning drizzle, trees dripping over mist-shrouded streets. I sat in my car watching raindrops race down the windshield, feeling as though I'd shed an entire existence, yet was stepping into a place where nobody knew my name or my failures. My savings were frighteningly modest, maybe enough for a few months if I lived like a monk. I rented a tiny room in an aging industrial district. Stained walls, low ceilings, a window overlooking a parking lot filled with rusting trucks. When the wind howled, the window frame rattled with a haunting whistle. At night, distant train horns mixed with rain drumming on tin roofs, jolting me awake from nightmares I couldn't escape. To survive, I juggled 3 jobs. Mornings, I worked as a barista at a cramped coffee shop, the smell of roasted beans greeting me like an old friend. I memorized complicated drink orders and the faces of regulars who became my only human connection. Afternoons, I assisted at a green technology trade fair, adjusting booth lights, checking sound equipment, printing materials for exhibitors. The pay barely covered expenses, but I observed countless entrepreneurs pitching their dreams, hunting investors, fighting for survival. Nights, I freelanced as a graphic designer for loyal Boston clients who hadn't forgotten me. I sat hunched before my laptop until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped, but each invoice payment meant another week in that worn-down room, another week of independence. Then one afternoon at the fair, everything shifted. I noticed a man standing alone at a modest booth displaying a miniature wind turbine. His face showed exhaustion, but his eyes burned with unshakable determination. On the table beside his prototype sat only a few brochures and a simple sign, "Clear Horizons Energy." I approached, intending to help him troubleshoot a malfunctioning microphone. "Need assistance with the sound?" I offered. He looked up, surprise and relief washing over his features. "That would be incredible. I think this thing is staging a rebellion." I laughed, genuinely laughed for the first time in months, reconnected the cables, and adjusted the settings. Sound came through crystal clear, much better. "I'm Connor, Autumn," I replied, wiping my hands on my apron. "What's your project?" He handed me a brochure, his passion evident despite his obvious struggle. "We're developing clean energy solutions for small and mid-sized communities, but my company's still in early stages and desperately understaffed. I have the ideas and technology, but nobody to handle actual operations." I scanned the materials, recognizing familiar terminology from my startup days. "How long have you been at this?" 3 years, Connor sighed heavily. "I can manage the technical work, but everything else, finances, HR, processes, I've been teaching myself as I go. Progress has been painfully slow." Something in his voice, his eyes, made me pause longer than professional curiosity warranted. He reminded me of myself years ago, passionate, struggling, refusing to surrender despite overwhelming odds. Throughout the afternoon, I noticed his booth attracted minimal traffic. I brought him coffee from my morning job and set it beside his prototype. "Consider this gratitude for showing me your work." Connor smiled, some of the pressure easing from his eyes. "Autumn, I don't know why I'm saying this to someone I just met, but I desperately need a partner, not an employee, someone I can trust to help build this from the ground up." I tilted my head, pulse quickening. "What if it's me?" He studied me intently, weighing possibilities. "Do you have experience in this field?" "I ran a renewable energy company in Boston," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Not a large operation, but I understand business from foundation to finish. I know how to secure capital, manage teams, and most importantly, I know how to keep a company standing when everything's collapsing around you." Connor's eyebrows rose, genuine interest sparking. "That's exactly what I need." We exchanged contact information. Before leaving that day, I watched him pack his booth with such careful focus, such refusal to quit, that I felt like I was watching my younger self working late, working alone, but never giving up. That night in my cramped room, I stared at my packed schedule across 3 jobs. My joking offer refused to leave my mind. Maybe this was opportunity, maybe just another risk, but somehow I knew I wanted to hear more of Connor's story, and maybe write a new chapter of my own. 3 days after the fair, Connor and I met at a quiet Capitol Hill cafe. He spread a thick folder before me, his entire business plan, expense sheets, potential client lists, financial projections more optimistic than realistic. "I'm terrible at this stuff," Connor admitted, gesturing at the chaos, "but I know my product works. With proper execution, it could genuinely change lives." I studied every page, underlining gaps, scribbling notes in margins. After nearly an hour, I looked up with absolute clarity. "If I accept this, I need complete operational control. I want to ensure everything staffing, processes, marketing moves in the right direction. In return, I want equity stakes to prove we're genuinely partners." Connor held my gaze for a long moment before nodding decisively. 10% to start. If revenue doubles within a year, you get another 10. I extended my hand. Deal. That handshake wasn't just a business agreement. It was a turning point I couldn't yet fully comprehend. Our early office was a rented room in a decrepit building on Seattle's outskirts, gray peeling walls, wooden floors that groaned with every step. One massive desk, two battered swivel chairs, a printer that jammed constantly, and a whiteboard crowded with untested theories. Mornings, I arrived before Connor to organize files and troubleshoot equipment. Some days I disassembled that cursed printer to extract crumpled paper. By noon, I sent marketing emails cold, called potential clients, and reached out to organizations that might embrace our technology. At night, when other offices went dark, Connor and I remained, discussing funding strategies, refining pitches, building something from nothing. One night near midnight, we hunched over laptops, exhaustion etched into Connor's features. "I don't understand why they're not responding," he muttered. "Our pitch is solid." I pulled my chair closer. "The problem isn't content. It's storytelling. You have brilliant technology, but investors need to understand why they should bet on us over everyone else." His eyes slowly brightened. "Can you help me rebuild the presentation? Not rebuild." I smiled. "Transform it so they remember you long after the meeting ends." We worked until 3 a.m. Me rewriting the narrative, adding concrete trial data, weaving in real stories of communities transformed by our product. Connor searched for compelling visuals, refined technical specifications, polished every detail. By the time we finished, we were both exhausted and exhilarated. In nights like those, the distance between us gradually closed. I began noticing small things. How Connor furrowed his brow when concentrating. How he always held doors open for me. How he brewed stronger coffee whenever I looked particularly drained. One evening while I cleaned the whiteboard, Connor appeared with 2 steaming burger boxes. "I know you haven't eaten," he said, setting one before me. I laughed. "Are you trying to keep me working overtime?" "No." He smiled with unexpected warmth. "I want to keep you with this project, and with me." I froze momentarily, then simply smiled and opened the box. We ate at the desk, discussing partner networks and technical improvements. Neither mentioned that remark again, but I felt something quietly growing between us, something that existed alongside the numbers and plans covering our whiteboard. By the end of our first fundraising week, we'd secured 3 meeting requests from investors Connor had never been able to reach before. That night, he leaned against the doorway watching me pack up, gratitude and determination mingling in his expression. "Autumn, I know we've just started, but I genuinely believe we can accomplish this." I looked up, catching his steady, sincere gaze, the same one he'd worn at that trade fair. "I believe it too," I replied, and this time I knew I wasn't just talking about the company. We worked through meals and sleep for nearly a year. Long days filled with spreadsheets, client meetings, and late nights before whiteboards covered in arrows and projections. All of it culminated in one extraordinary moment, the National Green Tech Association's Innovation Awards ceremony. I still remember the sensation when the MC announced, "Clear Horizons Energy." Connor turned to me, eyes blazing with triumph, his hand gripping mine tightly as we walked onstage together. Camera flashes exploded. Applause thundered through the hall. We accepted the award, bowed deeply, and were immediately invited to the upcoming International Clean Energy Conference in San Diego. Not just a presentation opportunity, but our ticket to taking the company's name global. The conference occupied a convention center so vast it felt like navigating a labyrinth, hundreds of booths, side stages, closed rooms filled with high-stakes negotiations. On opening morning, I stood at our display surveying massive competitor brands with marketing budgets that dwarfed our entire annual revenue. Connor was engaged with a group of European engineers, passionately explaining how our latest generation mini turbines functioned. I wandered through other sections to observe the competition, study trends, absorb everything. Passing a large booth with a glossy black sign reading Ross Global Energy, I stopped cold. Ross Global was legendary, a multinational conglomerate with investments spanning wind power, solar energy, and industrial battery storage. Inside, suited staff greeted guests, while LED screens continuously showcased their global projects. I was about to continue walking when I caught a conversation fragment between two employees standing nearby. I heard Michael Ross is actively seeking to acquire a small-scale energy storage company on the East Coast. Yeah, that's Jason Miller's company. Once they buy it, they'll instantly penetrate the small community market. My heart stopped. Jason, the name I'd believed was permanently erased from my future, suddenly appeared here, in a deal that could hand him and Lauren enormous advantages. On the main stage, the host announced the next presentation. The speaker was Michael Ross himself, CEO of this conglomerate. I slipped into the hall, finding a seat in the back row. Ross walked out with quiet confidence and began discussing his vision of expanding into distributed energy, emphasizing small-scale but flexible solutions deployable quickly in underserved communities. Listening intently, I realized our technology fit this strategy perfectly, perhaps even better than Jason's company ever could. I scribbled notes furiously as a plan began crystallizing in my mind. That evening, Connor and I sat at the hotel bar. He set water before me, concern evident. You've been lost in thought since we got back. What's happening? I told him what I'd overheard, then said bluntly, if Ross signs with Jason, they'll dominate this segment before we even enter the market. But if we approach Ross first and prove our technology is superior, we can not only block Jason, but open doors to global partnership. Connor leaned back, thoughtful. Logical, but Ross is extraordinarily busy. Getting a one-on-one meeting at this conference won't be easy. He'll attend the business networking sessions. I said firmly, I can get on the direct meeting list, and we're not going empty-handed. I'll prepare a proposal concise enough to grab his attention, sharp enough to make him want more. Connor studied me before smiling slightly. I admire your boldness. All right, let's try. The next morning, I registered for a small networking session titled Strategic Partnerships and Clean Energy, where Ross would be present. Only 10 companies were selected to pitch ideas in 5-minute windows. I spent the night compressing my presentation to 10 slides, each focusing exclusively on our technology's strongest points and partnership benefits. Connor prepared a compact demo model small enough to operate at the table. When our turn arrived, Ross was already seated, reviewing previous materials with evident disinterest. I opened with a true story, a coastal Washington town entirely dependent on diesel generators, and how our solution helped them slash energy costs by 70% in just 6 months. I watched Ross's expression shift, more focused now, genuinely engaged. Connor took over, explaining technical principles while activating our miniature turbine and storage system directly at the table. The soft hum of spinning blades and the row of LED lights glowing from clean energy created immediate visual impact. Ross asked pointed questions about costs, scalability, and payback timelines. We answered directly with real-world data and completed project examples. Finally, he nodded with unmistakable interest. I'd like to review a more detailed file. Send it to my assistant and we'll arrange a private meeting after the conference. As we stepped outside, Connor murmured, You just saved this company from serious damage. I smiled, but deep inside, I understood this transcended saving the company. This was about shifting the entire playing field so that nobody, especially Jason, could ever walk over me again. 2 days after the conference, an email arrived from Ross's assistant. Mr. Ross would like to invite you to the Seattle office next week to further discuss potential partnership. I reread it multiple times, ensuring this wasn't hallucination. Connor noticed me frozen before my screen. Good news. I turned to him, fighting to keep my voice steady despite the smile tugging at my lips. Ross wants a private meeting. The meeting occurred in a private conference room on Ross Global Headquarters' top floor. Through glass walls, I could see the Seattle skyline under silvery gray winter morning light. Ross entered carrying his characteristic calm demeanor, his eyes scanning every detail before settling across from me. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice deep and measured. "I've reviewed your file. The numbers are impressive, especially storage efficiency and production costs. But I want to hear directly from you. Why should I partner with Clear Horizons instead of Jason Miller's company?" I'd prepared extensively for this exact question. "Mr. Ross, our technology not only achieves 15% higher efficiency than market averages, but it's also fully customizable for each small community. Jason may have market presence, but he doesn't have solutions flexible enough for genuine long-term scaling. Partnering with us provides a sustainable, rapidly expandable model without overhauling existing infrastructure." Ross leaned back, fingers steepled thoughtfully. "You're partially correct, but Jason has offered to sell me his entire company at a price significantly below its valuation. He wants this deal desperately to secure a major contract with your family." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Ross met my eyes directly. "I've heard your family controls investments tied to a substantial real estate fund. Jason wants access. If my deal with him succeeds, he gains credibility to penetrate that fund. This feels like a multi-layered game, and I dislike being pulled into messy family entanglements." I drew a deep breath, feeling my pulse accelerate. In that instant, all the puzzle pieces of how Jason and Lauren operated snapped into devastatingly clear focus. I understood that if Ross signed with Jason, not only would my company lose this opportunity, but Jason and my family would have another mechanism to bind and control me. "Mr. Ross," I said slowly, firmly, "I cannot control what Jason or my family does, but I can guarantee one thing: the core technology you're seeking, he doesn't possess it. I'm willing to commit full usage and development rights for that technology to Ross Global if we partner. This creates a foundation you can build on without being entangled in personal relationships." Ross remained silent for several heartbeats, his gaze weighing risks against opportunities. Then he asked, "Can you prove that right now?" I extracted a USB drive from my bag and slid it across the table. "This contains complete technical designs, independent test results, and the pending patent application. Every data point is verifiable, and I've brought only one copy. Here." Ross examined the drive as if weighing its significance. Finally, he nodded. "If what you claim checks out, I'll choose Clear Horizons, but I need one additional commitment. Ensure the supply chain for this technology doesn't leak, especially to Jason's operation." "I promise," I replied without hesitation. "And to give you complete peace of mind, I'll allow your technical team to inspect our entire production and operational process. We're transparent from start to finish." Ross smiled slightly, the first genuine warmth that meeting. "I appreciate how you work direct, and you understand your value. A framework agreement will be sent within 2 weeks, but one warning: once we sign, Jason will know. Are you prepared for that?" I looked out the window at tall buildings casting long shadows under the dim sky. "I've been ready for a long time, Mr. Ross." Walking out of Ross Global Headquarters, cold wind whipped against my face, but inside I felt warm. I knew this was only the opening move in a complex chess match, but I'd just gained a decisive advantage. Connor met me at a nearby coffee shop, his eyes bright with anticipation. "How did it go?" he agreed. I said, unable to suppress my smile. "As long as we secure the core technology." Connor nodded slowly. "We'll make it happen. And I've never seen you so determined. I believe this will be a genuine turning point." I held the warm coffee cup in my hands, watching the busy street outside. In my mind, the images of Jason and Lauren finally faded, no longer sharp like they once were. Now, the most important reality was that I was on the right path, a path I'd chosen for myself, no longer led or controlled by anyone. The Ross Global deal finalized after nearly 2 months of meticulous negotiations. On contract signing day, Connor and I stood side by side in a spacious conference room, large glass panels casting mid-day sunlight across the table in golden streams. Ross shook hands with each person, his eyes radiating satisfaction. This contract didn't just bring funding and global market access. It served as a shield protecting us from any direct competition from Jason. In the months that followed, Clear Horizons transformed so rapidly that even I was sometimes astonished. We left our cramped suburban rental and moved into a modern downtown Seattle office building floor. The ceiling glass walls, a conference room large enough for the entire engineering team, bright open workspaces, and a sophisticated client lounge. I remember walking into our new headquarters on opening day. Connor stood beside me, arms crossed, and whispered, "We've come extraordinarily far, Autumn." I smiled. And we still have much further to go. Work became so consuming that time felt compressed. We expanded the team, hiring additional engineers, operations staff, and professional marketing personnel. Revenue tripled within 6 months of partnering with Ross. Every morning, walking into the office, I saw our turbines and energy storage systems featured in market reports and industry publications. Amid this whirlwind, my relationship with Connor quietly deepened. There were no dramatic love declarations or grand gestures, just steady companionship through each project, each sleepless night, each tense negotiation. One late afternoon, sitting on our new office rooftop overlooking Elliott Bay glittering in the sunset, Connor turned to me and said, "Autumn, I want you to be my partner in every aspect of my life." I was surprised but couldn't suppress my smile. "Did you just propose to me in the language of a businessman?" Connor laughed and took my hand. "I think that's the most honest way I know." We married quietly at Seattle City Hall on a cool Friday morning. Only Emily, my best friend, 2 of Connor's college friends, and a City Hall clerk as witnesses. I wore a simple white dress, he wore a navy suit, no flowers, no reception. After signing the marriage certificate, we had lunch at a small seafood restaurant by the shore, then returned to the office in time for a video conference with Ross. A year later, when everything in our company had settled into smooth, sustainable rhythm, whispers reached me that Jason's company was hemorrhaging. Major contracts delayed indefinitely, pilot projects failing catastrophically, cash flow evaporating. The market was evolving rapidly, and they couldn't keep pace. I paid minimal attention until one afternoon when Emily walked into my office and handed me an envelope, her expression cautious. "Lauren sent this," she said carefully. Inside was an invitation to a family dinner at an upscale restaurant. At the bottom, in Lauren's unmistakable handwriting, "Sister, I think we can work together. Family is still family." I sat motionless, staring at those words. Family, a term they'd weaponized for years only to bind me to things I never chose, to serve agendas that never included my well-being. That evening I went, not because of the invitation, but because I wanted to hear directly what desperation sounded like when it came from their mouths. Lauren was already there, wearing a striking crimson dress. Jason sat beside her, looking considerably less confident than I remembered, the swagger replaced by something resembling defeat. My mother occupied the head of the table, her eyes studying me as I approached. "Autumn." Lauren spoke before I could sit down. "I know we've had our misunderstandings in the past, but now we have an opportunity to create something beneficial for all of us. Your company and mine could complement each other perfectly." I looked straight at her. "My company is not a shared family asset. It's the result of my work and Connor's vision." Jason cut in, his voice carrying urgent desperation. "We're struggling with the technology. If you agree to partner with us, we could save both operations. I set my water glass down, my voice remaining perfectly calm. Jason, I remember with crystal clarity who didn't believe in me when I needed it most. And Lauren, you say family is still family, but family isn't built on exploiting each other only when it's convenient. My mother lightly touched my arm, attempting to keep her tone pleasant. Autumn, don't close your heart like this. This is the time to put the past aside and help one another. I turned to her, keeping my expression completely neutral. I'm not closing my heart, Mom. I'm simply choosing not to involve myself in relationships where people only remember I exist when they need something saved. The table fell into suffocating silence. Lauren looked at me with a mixture of shock and disappointment. Jason stayed silent, his hand gripping the table edge until his knuckles whitened. I stood, placing the invitation back in front of them. I genuinely wish you both the best, I said, then left the restaurant, leaving behind sighs and murmured conversations that no longer concerned me. Outside, the Seattle sea breeze blew hard, the smell of salt and mist filling my lungs. I knew that unlike in the past, this time I was leaving that meeting with no wounds, only the profound lightness of finally being free from the invisible strings that once controlled me. Clear Horizons' 5-year anniversary gala was held at a waterfront hotel in Seattle, where massive glass panels reflected golden light and the sparkling water offshore like scattered diamonds. For months, my team and I had meticulously prepared not just as a celebration, but as a strategic reinforcement of the company's image with partners, clients, and international investors. The guest list contained hundreds of names, major figures in the clean energy industry, city leaders, press, and the entire Ross Global team. Among those invited, I had my secretary send an invitation to my mother, Lauren, and Jason without mentioning my role. They only knew it was a significant event for Ross and Clear Horizons, where Lauren and Jason, now merely mid-level employees in the project department, were invited through their company. I wanted everything to reach them as a revelation, not through rumors but through witnessing it with their own eyes. That evening, I chose an emerald green evening gown with an elegant the shoulder design and perfectly tailored lines. Connor wore a black tuxedo with a small silver turbine pin, a gift from our engineering team the previous year. We arrived at the main hall as the first guests began gathering. Soft jazz music filled the air, golden light spilling across the grand ballroom. Tables were arranged in a crescent around the stage, each adorned with white orchids and small name cards. Uniformed servers moved smoothly, carrying trays of wine and cocktails. I stood in the reception area, shaking hands with each arriving partner. When Ross arrived, he smiled and shook my hand like an old friend. Autumn, everything looks absolutely perfect, he said. Tonight, this is your stage. Minutes later, I saw my mother walk in clutching a small handbag, followed by Lauren and Jason. They were well-dressed, but clearly hadn't expected to see me here. My mother's eyes flicked over me, at first unsettled, then quickly regaining composure. Lauren and Jason froze, their expressions shifting from surprise to confusion, to something resembling dread. "Hello, Mom," I said first. "I'm glad you came." She glanced around the hall, then asked as if to confirm reality, "What are you doing here?" I smiled lightly. "You'll see in just a moment." Connor stepped forward and shook my mother's hand like a true gentleman. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm Connor, Autumn's husband." I noticed Jason frown slightly and Lauren bite her lip. Clearly, they had never imagined I was married, much less to someone standing as an equal among Ross Global's leadership at this event. Once everyone was settled, the lights in the hall began to dim. The MC walked onto the stage and gave a brief introduction about Clear Horizons' 5-year journey from a small company to a strategic partner of Ross Global. The massive LED screen behind him lit up with powerful images: wind turbines in the mountains, energy storage stations in coastal communities, smiles of people experiencing stable electricity. The first time, and now, the MC said, "Please welcome the co-founder, Chief Operating Officer, and the heart of Clear Horizons, Mrs. Autumn Reynolds." I stepped forward to thunderous applause. Under the lights, I could see my mother, Lauren, and Jason sitting frozen at a table near the back, their eyes fixed on me in stunned disbelief. I began my speech with a warm but steady voice. 5 years ago, Clear Horizons was just an idea nurtured in a tiny office with a jammed printer and 2 people who believed clean energy could change the world. Today, we stand here not just because of revenue growth, but because of the real impact we've made for thousands of families. I spoke about the grueling journey, the sleepless nights with Connor and our team, the struggles of our first projects, and the moment Ross Global trusted us enough to join forces. I didn't mention my personal past with Jason or Lauren, but each time I used words like determination, self-reliance, or never surrendering. I saw my mother's brow furrow slightly, and Lauren avoided looking directly at me. When I finished, I invited Ross and Connor to join me on stage for a toast. "And this toast," I said, raising my glass high, "is for everyone who has ever been underestimated, yet quietly worked to prove their worth. Not for revenge, but to create something genuinely worth being proud of." Applause erupted again across the hall. As I stepped down, several partners came forward to shake hands and offer congratulations. I noticed my mother still at the table, her expression unreadable, while Lauren whispered something to Jason. About half an hour later, as I was speaking with a group of guests, my mother approached. "Autumn, are you a co-owner of this company?" I nodded. "Connor and I co-founded and run it together." She looked at me for a long moment, as if searching for the right words but holding them back. "You've changed dramatically," she finally said, her tone carrying both surprise and something resembling regret. "We all change," I replied. "We just each take different paths." Lauren came over too, offering a polite smile. "You did well, very impressive. Thank you," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "Every achievement comes from choices and taking responsibility for them." Jason stood behind her, silent, his eyes meeting mine for a fleeting second before shifting away. He didn't need to say anything. His silence communicated enough. The gala carried on with music, laughter, and the clink of glasses. But in one corner, the 3 of them, my mother, Lauren, and Jason, were no longer the ones who dictated how I was perceived. Now they were simply guests in the world I had built, a world where their presence no longer influenced how I lived or the direction I chose. Standing in the warm golden light of that ballroom, I felt clearly that I had stepped out of that old shadow, fully and forever. When the lights softened again to signal the program's end, the MC invited me back on stage for closing remarks. Connor stood in the front row, his gaze giving me strength. I took the microphone, drew a deep breath, and smiled at the room. Over the past 5 years, Clear Horizons has not only grown as a business, but has also become proof of the power of belief and collaboration. Tonight, I am thrilled to announce that we will officially launch a global partnership with Ross Global, bringing our clean energy technology to 3 new continents within the next 2 years. The applause swelled, lasting several powerful moments. I let the sound fade slightly before continuing. "And there's one more thing I'd like to share. Behind every strategy, every blueprint, and every sleepless night, I've never walked alone. I'd like to introduce to you all the co-founder of Clear Horizons and the life partner I am proud to stand beside, Connor Reynolds." Connor walked up to a surge of clapping. He took my hand, his eyes bright yet humble. "If it weren't for Autumn," he said, "all my ideas would have remained on paper. She made them real." From the far corner, I saw my mother, Lauren, and Jason still seated, but without the confident expressions they once wore. Lauren bit her lip. Jason's face was unreadable, and my mother watched us for a long time, her gaze carrying a tangle of complicated emotions. After the program ended and guests began to leave, I was speaking to a group of investors when my assistant whispered, "Your mother would like to see you privately." I nodded and stepped into the quiet hallway. She stood there with a half-finished glass of champagne. "Autumn, we need to talk." Her voice was gentle, but I recognized the familiar rhythm, the kind that meant her words would go beyond mere pleasantries. "You've done remarkably well," she began. "Honestly, I never imagined your work would reach this magnitude." She hesitated, lowering her voice. "But there's something I hope you'll consider. Jason and Lauren, things aren't going well for them. Your company works with Ross, and they're employed there. If you could make sure they keep their positions or at least aren't let go." I stayed silent for a moment, ensuring my answer would be crystal clear. "Mom, at Clear Horizons or Ross, opportunities are given based on merit and the value someone brings, not on family ties and not on personal history. I chose this path to free myself from everything that once held me back. I won't turn it into a safety net for those who once abandoned me." Her brow tightened. "Autumn, you speak as if you're no longer part of this family." I looked straight into her eyes. "I'm still part of the family, but I'm no longer someone they can assume will rescue them when it's convenient. They need to stand on their own, just like I had to." She looked like she wanted to say more but stopped. She gave a small nod and walked away, leaving me in the quiet hallway, listening to her footsteps fade into the distance. When I returned to the ballroom, Connor was waiting. He smiled and held out his hand as if to lead me somewhere. "Want to step outside for a bit?" We walked out to the high balcony where the breeze carried the salty scent from the bay, cool and fresh. Below us, Seattle stretched out in glowing threads of gold against the darkness. Connor draped his jacket over my shoulders. "Tired? Not tonight," I said, leaning lightly on the railing. "I just feel lighter, like a part of me has finally been set down." He stayed quiet for a moment, then asked, "Which part?" "The part that was always waiting for my family's approval," I replied. They once thought my decisions were mistakes, that my leaving was failure. But what they called failure was actually the beginning of me finding true freedom and happiness. And now I don't need their approval anymore. Connor took my hand and squeezed it firmly. "I know, and I'm incredibly proud of you." We stood there for a long time, watching the city lights shimmering on the water. In that moment, I realized that everything I had once lost had made room for something far more precious. A career I built with my own hands, a true partner by my side, and a life I chose for myself, no one else. Below us, the gentle sound of waves lapping against the shore blended with the breeze and the faint music still drifting from the ballroom, as if the whole city was closing an old chapter with me and opening a new sky entirely my own. I believe that no matter where we start, each of us has the right to choose our own path and build our worth with our own hands and heart. Blood ties don't always mean support, and sometimes distance opens the door to true freedom. What do you think about this story? If you were in my place, how would you act when the family who once turned their back on you comes asking for help? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your answer might be the strength someone else needs in a similar situation. And if you want to keep following along, hearing real, heartfelt stories filled with profound lessons about family, love, and choices, make sure to follow the channel so you won't miss what comes next. Life always has its surprises, and I'll be here to tell them to you.